Morten. Hi, Kingsley. Good morning and good evening.
Yeah.
Why don't you both introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Morten. I'm the founder of Nordic Approach and Tropic, green coffee importers based in Oslo, Norway.
I'm Kingsley Griffin, and I'm the owner and founder of Kingha Coffee Company, located in southwestern Uganda, on the edge of Congo and Rwanda.
And hi, my name is Suzie. I work in communications for Nordic Approach and Tropic. And hello to all of our roasters. Thank you for joining us. This is our second Origin conversation. Normally we would have these conversations with you in person, either at one of our seasonal cupping events, maybe at a trade show, maybe in your roastery. But we are all living in the time of travel restrictions, and it looks like these will be imposed on us for a while. So we're taking this conversation online. We've also taken our cuppings online. So if you haven't already, go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Nordic Approach, and you can cup along with our team here in Oslo. Today we are talking about Uganda, and this is a new origin for us and one we're really excited about. So Morten, Uganda's not known well as a specialty origin. What is it that appealed to you about Uganda?
There's many things. I mean, first of all, I've discovered or seen lately that there is huge amount of really great coffee in terms of, like plant material, environment. So there's a lot of let's say, unrevealed potential there that I weren't aware about. And then secondly, I mean, we have always been very, let's say, fond of East African coffees in general. So I think, like it totally fits our profile. And also personally, I mean, I basically started in Africa when I started Nordic, and yeah, it's still a place that I really love to work, and I think the team here in general is like super engaged in Africa and East Africa and coffees. So that's one thing. But I mean, there's many years since I actually went to Uganda the first time to look at coffees, and I've tasted a lot of coffees over the years. The difference to me in Uganda compared to some of the other East African coffee growing regions is they haven't even yet developed, like let's say a structure and supply chain that are targeting specialty coffee as such. So even if the coffee is there in terms of like cherries and plant material, it's not that many growers and exporters and organizations that have worked actively on specialty and to increase quality of the coffees. But that's started to happen now. To me, it's more like the last 5 years where things have like developed more in that direction. And the other thing is that it's not that many places in East Africa where you can do naturals on scale. So except from Ethiopia, of course, I mean, we haven't had access to good projects doing naturals on the level that we want naturals to be at. And I think Uganda is very suited for that. Both washed and naturals there can be amazing. And the plant material, a lot of it is similar to what they have in Kenya. There's like great altitudes. So yeah, a lot of good reasons to work in Uganda, in my opinion.
One of the other challenges we often find when wanting to source high quality coffees is finding the right partners. What makes Kingha a good partner for Nordic Approach?
First of all, I mean, I met Kingsley, and of course he have like a philosophy that suits us very well. It is in an area that is like unexplored. Kingsley can probably say more about that, but there's like very few other people that are actively working on coffee at that level in that part of Uganda. One of the main reasons why we work with Kingsley is because in Kingha Estate is because it's limited in kind of in quantity, let's say. I mean, you can find groups or exporters or whatever that are doing container loads on let's say high commercial, some specialty, but it's it's more. What we're doing here is more limited in quantity, meaning still just one container. The farm itself is like relatively small, and then you add on the outgrowers. So, and on top of that, I mean, he's ticking off a lot of the boxes on both, like environmental farming, organic practices on his farm, sustainability, and then also the work he's doing actively on different processing methods. Like the dialogue we have with Kingsley also allows us to have some, like some opinions and impact on how we can do things and how we can develop it together. The way we communicate makes it easy to kind of find ways to, let's say, customize a product that works for our market, that works for us as a company. We can, we can have very open discussions about like pricing of the coffee, cost of production. All these things adds up to, like something where we can plan ahead and really develop things together. So I think that's the main reason. And the coffees are great, of course. I mean, that's also important.
So Kingsley, you have a very interesting story. You were a school teacher in Canada, and then now you are a coffee farmer in Uganda. Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, it was by accident, really. It was never a planned transition. So I was living in Dubai at the time in 2014, and my wife and I decided to go to Uganda to see the mountain gorillas and just do a week-long kind of tourist trip, enjoy the country, and then head back to life as a teacher. And we ended up coming across a school that needed a bit of help. So we donated some money to the school, and I left my email contacts and said, hopefully we'll be in touch. And they sent me an email back asking for some financial help. And I decided that instead of just sending money, I would go in person and provide the help and the assistance, but I wanted to be on the ground to see it being delivered. So I went back for the summer. As a teacher, you get the summers off and Christmas off and all these breaks. So I took my summer break and went back and lived in a local house with no running water, no electricity, no kitchen, no anything. Like very, very, very much living like a local. And what I did was we built some gardens, we built some pens for some livestock and some small outbuildings. And I funded the entire thing. And as I was doing that, I would take kind of long walks in the evening, and I noticed there's coffee growing all over the place, but not any really kind of structured, organized manner. So my wife and I decided that we'd try to have a little coffee charity side project. So we bought a small piece of land, and then I called the Uganda Coffee Authority and said, I've got about 20 acres of land. I'd like to grow coffee. What do I do? And maybe a week later, 20,000 coffee seedlings just showed up at the farm. And this truck literally brought them in and dropped them off and said, good luck. So I had to figure out how to plant them. So we planted them all by hand, dug all the holes by hand. I brought in some guys from the village, and we did the whole thing. And then once the coffee trees were in the ground, then I had to figure, okay, I have coffee, what's the next step? So then we, myself and some guys from the village and a few local masons, we built a washing station, some fermentation tanks, an office, a small warehouse, a bunch of drying racks, all this again with no experience, all kind of by hand. And then it was up. The trees are in the ground, the structures are up, and so then it was time to either figure it out or fail. So what I did was, again, I kept going back from Dubai to Uganda during my breaks and kind of working on it. with the idea of just giving all the money that came from it back to the community. But I also realized in doing that how much I enjoyed growing coffee and working with farmers and working in the village and getting to know people and being part of something bigger than myself. So somehow in 2017, I convinced my wife to pack up and move with me to Uganda to become a full-time coffee farmer, coffee processor, just coffee person. So and here we are a couple of years later. So it was never really a planned thing. It just sort of over time developed, and it's been really, really steep learning curve, but a great one. So really kind of stumbled into it, but I'm really enjoying it.
So, growing specialty coffee in Uganda isn't easy, and you are in the West, which is even more complicated. What are some of the challenges of growing coffee in West Uganda?
I think that the largest challenge we have consistently is infrastructure. The network of roads is really bad. And then unfortunately for everybody in the area, the coffee harvest season is also the rainy season. So when you need to get the coffee from the coffee trees back to the coffee estate, you're sending bodas up, like local motorcycles, up the side of these mountains in a pouring rainstorm to put 60 or 80 kilos of coffee in the back of the motorcycle, send it down the mountain, up to the road to a buying center, and you end up, knee deep in mud, pushing these motorcycles out of the valleys. It's pouring rain. It gets crazy, so the lack of roads and the heavy rains make it really tough. There's also no banks around. So getting farmers the money they need for their coffee growing and for their, daily needs can be difficult. You can't just go to the ATM and withdraw cash to pay. You've got to find a way to have either money with you or pay them through different mobile money channels. But even that's difficult because not everybody has a phone, or they can't charge their phone, or there isn't access to mobile money stations. So I think that the infrastructure is probably the biggest challenge. And the remoteness of the area. There's nobody else in the Southwest. It's really, really remote. On one side, it's the Congo, other side's Rwanda. There's not much to it. So it's the remoteness and the infrastructure make it pretty tough, but it also makes it very special because it means that it's, everything I do is a first. So the challenges in some ways are incredible for me to learn. So I don't mind them. I sometimes I mind being waist deep in mud in the middle of the night, but I don't mind what we have to do because it's really interesting.
And so our roasters may have noticed on our offer list, we have coffees from Kingha Estate and coffees from Kingha Collective. What's the difference?
So Kingha Estate is the coffee that's grown on the 20 acres of land that I purchased in 2015. And that the great thing about that is that we have full control over all the processes, all the aspects of the coffee tree, from the seedlings that I planted by hand to the final harvest and the processing, all of the inputs, everything is done to our very kind of exacting standards. So Kingha Estate coffee is very, very much in our complete control. And it's sort of my kind of pride and joy because it's got all of the years of hard work and sweat and everything else that is part of that. So it's something really special to me. It's also quite small, 20 acres, so it's very easy to kind of maintain very strict quality control on that. So Kingha Estate coffee comes from our estates. The Kingha Collective, that's kind of why I got into this in the first place, because we work with over 500 partner farmers, and we collect the coffee from different villages or different large-scale farmers, and they're part of the Kingha Collective. And what we do with those guys is we really work very, very closely with them to try and produce the top quality coffee we can. And then we identify different villages that have, the grade one, the really high quality coffee, and we work with them directly. And the ones that need help, we work with them even more. So it's a collective of different farmers who supply us with coffee, but they're also part of the larger Kingha ethos where everybody we work with comes under the umbrella of Kingha, and we provide them with all kinds of financial and different material inputs to really help them. So the collective is our partner farmers, and we're really proud of the guys we have. And
the coffees that we get from Kingha Estate are also single variety, is that correct?
Yeah, we planted SL28.
That's the same variety that you find in Kenya.
Yeah, it's from Scottish Labs. The Scottish Labs 28, so it's the same one you have in Kenya. Yeah, but the nice thing is our estate's all one variety.
And what is the tradition of coffee growing in Uganda? It's not an origin that's well known within the specialty community. What have they been growing, and how do they grow it?
Traditionally, coffee is largely a cash crop in Uganda, and it hasn't been seen as a quality product, but more of quantity in the past. I mean, that's changing now there's various projects in the east and a little bit in the west and us in the southwest. But traditionally, they grow for quantity, so it's grown and picked and put in a sack and then just dried on the ground on a tarp. And the emphasis is on how many kgs you can produce, not on the quality. And then the coffee is taken from these farmers to a local mill, where it's milled and then sent for export overseas. So what we've tried to do is change that and focus a lot more on the quality and a lot less on the quantity. Sort of trying to change the tradition, really.
And tell us about the farmers that you work with. What size farms do they have? What are they growing? What are their stories?
Yeah, so we have farmers that range from about half an acre up to 6 acres is kind of the general average. We do have one farmer who's got a 40-acre estate, but that's the exception, not really the rule. Mostly it's smallhold farmers, and they each produce a few hundred kilos of coffee per season. The altitude we range from our lowest is about 1,250 meters above sea level up to about 2,000 meters. So it's quite a large range. And the good thing about this is there's 2 distinct seasons within that range. So when Kingha Estate has their main crop, an area at 2,000 meters, they have their fly crop, so the smaller crop. And then again, it's reversed. So which means there's always a large selection of coffee from one area of the main crop and then one area of fly crop at the same time. So it's kind of unique in that aspect. The majority of the farmers in the area grow a variety of crops along with coffee. So what we try and do is help them to grow crops that increase the quality of their coffee, that add nutrients back into the soil, provide them with shade, provide them with the type of crops that really help their coffee flourish. So when we come back to collect the coffee, everybody's pleased.
And Kingha began as a community project. How does the farming community benefit by working with you?
Yeah, there's a couple of really interesting projects we have ongoing at Kingha. I think that the most consistent one, of the most ongoing one, is that we do a lot of free training in the area with all of our partner farmers, from large scale all the way down to the smallest farmers. So we provide them with training on how to plant, how to prune coffee, the right kind of fertilizers, pest control, how to go organic if they choose to, which most of them are, shade growing, all the different kind of things that make coffee great. We provide all the training on that. And then where possible, we provide them with inputs. So things like boots, scales, pruning saws, tarps, shovels, manure, any way we can help them. And this is an ongoing project we've been doing for the last 4 years. And every year we add more and more farmers, and the quality of the coffee increases year on year just based on the work we're doing with these guys. So that's one of our main ways to impact, because we can get out to quite a large area with that one. So I'm really enjoy that one. A new one we've started recently is a school project. We've done it with one school so far. And what we do is we went to a school called Bujeri Primary School, and they had a very small coffee garden, maybe half an acre. So we extended that to 1 acre, and we revitalized it fully for them, dug some trenches, put some new seedlings in, pruned the ones they had, and then did a lot of education around how to keep that up, with the agreement that when the coffee, in about a year from now, when the coffee is ready and is flourishing, we will come back and buy the coffee from them at above market prices. And what their half of the bargain is they need to ensure that the extra revenue they're generating goes back into the school and provides things like school fees for the children, or books, salaries for teachers, uniforms, school supplies. so that, the work we're doing with the school benefits the kids who need it most. So that's been it's been a really fun one, and we're looking forward to seeing how it's about a season and a half away from the coffee being ready to harvest. So we're looking forward to that. We also have a project with World Coffee Research where we're doing a coffee seedling trial. They've chosen 4 different varieties to plant on our estate, and we're going to watch those coffees and see which one performs the best under different conditions. And the seedlings that perform the best, we're then going to distribute those to any or all farmers who'd like them. And all the costs of this are borne by Kingha and by World Coffee Research. So again, it's more free assistance to the farmers just to help them improve the quantity and quality of the coffee that they have. And that's in partnership with World Coffee Research.
So what about on Kingha Estate itself? What kind of farming practices are you implementing?
Yeah, so we have a 3-tiered approach. It's quality soil, quality tree, quality coffee. So obviously, when you grow coffee, it starts with the soil. If the soil is no good, no matter what you do, how you pick it, how many shade trees you put in, it's just not going to be very good. So the first thing we have to do is tend to the soil. We've got a really good agronomist right now who was born on a coffee estate. He's been in coffee his whole life. He loves coffee. His name's Andre, and he's fantastic. And he's really been working hard on the soil. So it's fully organic. We use inputs from, I'd say maximum about 10-kilometer radius. So all the manure we collect, all the mulch we collect, everything we put into the ground comes from within our, very close to the coffee estates. It's fully organic, shade grown, and then all of the coffee pulp and all of the coffee processing water that is generated during the coffee season, we put that back into our estate. So our estate is zero waste. So we don't create any waste. So we start with the soil and make sure the soil is really well cared for, and there's nothing that goes to waste. So yeah, basically it's healthy soil leads to healthy trees. So the better the soil, the better the trees, and then healthy trees give you the really nice, healthy coffee cherries, and the beautiful cherries lead to beautiful coffee.
And beyond farming, you have a really interesting approach to quality. So far, you've been doing mostly washed coffees, but with really interesting processing methods. Can you talk a bit more about those?
Yeah, I mean, initially we started off with just doing pure washed coffees, and it's fun, but it kind of became standardized where it wasn't really exciting. It was just the way that it was. So we started experimenting with different ways of processing coffee through either fermenting it for much longer, allowing it to more of the mucilage to come off and giving it more of a fermented kind of winey taste, or sometimes we would take it and ferment it for 6 hours and then put it right from the fermentation tanks onto the drying beds, which leaves a lot of the mucilage on the coffee, so you get a much sugarier, much sweeter kind of toffee chocolatey taste. Last season we did a bunch of coffee sort of anaerobic, where you try and cut off the oxygen during the fermentation process. So you take the coffee cherries, we did anyway, took them as cherry, put it in a sack, and then tied up the sack and left it to sit for a couple of days. And then inside the sack, as the coffee starts to ferment, it creates a lot of heat, which breaks down the enzymes in the coffee and produces some really nice kind of bold sort of fruity and strong kind of stone fruit flavors, which is just fantastic. We also did the same thing, and then after sitting in a sack for 4 days, we pulped it and put it onto the drying beds that way, and to see if there's a difference between doing a natural or doing this kind of pulped sack fermented style. Just kind of mostly playing with fermentation times and fermentation methods and seeing what brings out the different nuances of the coffee cherry, because we've got fantastic coffee on the estate and great coffee from our farmers. So the more processes we can play with, the more exciting flavors we can get out of the coffee.
And so what are your future plans for Kingha?
I don't know. I mean, it's difficult to give a very clear picture. I do have some pretty good ideas. I'd like to, our neighbor has 30 some odd acres of land he's looking to sell. And I've had some kind of preliminary discussions with him, but buying land in Uganda is not an easy thing to do. So if I can work it out with this guy, we'll probably acquire his land, and then we can double our estates, which would double our production and really bring some sizable volumes of Kingha Estate. to the markets would be amazing. Also bringing in more farmers into the kind of the Kingha, the farmer program, the partner farmers, although not to a point where it's so big it's hard to control the quality, but just to a point where I feel like we have enough farmers to satisfy the demand, but not so it's so big we can't be really tight with the quality, because it's really important we maintain that. And then also putting up some small drying stations and micro washing stations in some farther away areas. Like one area we work with is about, I'd say, an hour and a half away. And if it's raining, it's probably 2.5 hours away. So it's almost too difficult to get there and bring the coffee back in the same day. So we did a small experiment this last few weeks with them, where we put a little buying center, and we'll see what the results are, the cupping, and if it works out well, we'll kind of repeat that process. So sort of satellite farms, but within the Kingha area.
That all sounds very exciting. We are really looking forward to seeing future coffees from Kingha. Now, we're speaking to you from Canada, even though you're now based in Uganda. Obviously, you've returned back to Canada because of COVID-19. Tell us what's happening on the ground in Uganda, and what impact is any restrictions having on the coffee supply chain?
Yeah, it's been really tough, actually. I left right when they were starting to lock down the country, and the biggest challenges we're facing is the volume of coffee that we generally get from our partner farmers has been reduced to about a quarter of its usual volumes. So initially with the lockdown, all transportation was banned, so you couldn't get around, you couldn't get to the villages, you couldn't get the coffee from the farmers. The farmers didn't want to come because they weren't sure what COVID was. There was a lot of misinformation, so it made it very difficult to collect coffee. So we kind of have a much smaller volumes this season, which will affect the overall financial picture of Kingha. But there is always a silver lining, which is that we've got a chance to really tighten our quality control on the small volumes we have and really play around with it and see what amazing things we can bring from the small volume of coffee we have. So it's difficult financially, but it may lead to be really good in the end. We may find some really interesting and unique ways to process coffee out of it. And then also getting the coffee to market. Lots of delays with shipping, lots of delays with transportation, just general delays with no one really sure what they can and can't do, and people, for obvious reasons, not coming to work. A lot of the shipping lines are working at half capacity, quarter capacity. So it just makes the entire, infrastructure from the coffee tree to the port of Mombasa much more challenging.
Well, fortunately, we have one container already landed and another container on its way. So our Kingha coffees will be arriving soon. Fortunately, we got those out without too much delay. Morten, what can roasters expect from our Uganda offering this year?
They can expect a good range of coffees that have been undergoing different, like Kingsley said, different type of fermentation, different types of drying. So I think, for Kingha right now, it's mainly wash coffees, but they are very different in flavor because of the processing. And there's also, there's both coffees from the estate itself that are the single variety SL28. There are coffees from different areas where the outgrowers are planting coffee. So, like the soil and the environment, the altitude will also, make a difference for the different coffees that we're buying. So everything is separated basically by group, area, and or processing method. So there's it's a great opportunity to get an overview of the different flavors that can come out of that area, as well as it's still a project in the early stages, so it's good now, and it's just starting. So what is very interesting to me is that there's so much potential still to take out of this. And I think everyone is learning, including the farmers, the outgrowers also, that Kingha works with very actively in terms of improving, like the soil and the plants and everything. So yeah, to me, it's what we see now is kind of an early stage, outcome of what we can have, for many years from now. So yeah, but check it out on the offer list, and you will see a lot of different names and different processes all around Kingha.
So also don't forget that we have a virtual cupping of Ugandan coffees, including 4 coffees from Kingha, the estate and collective. So you can find out what Morten thinks about all of those cups in the virtual cupping. If you go to youtube.com/Nordic Approach, you can find all our virtual cupping videos there. Morten, thank you, and Kingsley, thank you so much. I know it's quite late for you where you are, and you're doing multiple shifts, Canadian shifts and Ugandan shifts at the moment, so we really appreciate your time.
No problem, I enjoyed it, thank you.
And I hope to see all of our roasters again next time.